Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this elegant petal wire work ring. Now it's a continuous ring band going all the way around your finger, and you can decorate it however you want to or leave it without beads completely as well. That's equally an elegant look. And this ring also matches a previous bracelet that I did, so it will make a great set. Link for that will be in the description box down below. But if you want to learn how to make this ring, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're using. Now I'm using a regular round copper wire, and the first gauge here is a 0.8mm. This will be our base wire. And then I'm using a 0.25mm wire, and this will be our weaving wire. Now you could easily use say a 0.3mm instead, that will still be nice and fine. And then of course if you want to add some beads in, you'll need those. Now I'm using some 2mm rounds, and these specific ones are faceted purple coated hematite gemstone beads. But of course you can use whatever you want to, even different shapes. And also of course leave the beads out completely and just have it as a decorative ring band. As for the tools, we'll need some flush cutters so we can cut our wire, tweezers and nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and then I have this mandrel with different size steps on it, and I'm going to use that to make the petals with. You can really use anything you have handy that has the right size and shape. Now of course you'll find the material list and useful links in the description box down below. Otherwise let's get it all ready and let's get started. We then just need to cut some lengths of our wire. So first of all I have a length of about 30 centimeters of a 0.8mm, and just make sure there's no kinks or bends in it. As for the 0.25mm, I'm leaving that attached to the reel, that way we have minimum wastage, and it's also kind of hard to know exactly how much we're going to need. But the first thing we need to do is start shaping our base wire here. So first of all, I'm going to put the two ends together just gently so we know roughly where the middle is, and that is down here. Then I'm going to also grab my 6-step mandrel here, and first of all I'm just going to use one of the smallest steps because I just want to make the very first loop that's going to be on one end here. And that one can just be quite small, so I then just want to place that where that midpoint is, and then start bringing the two ends around the mandrel here and basically creating a loop that is pretty small. So something a bit like that, and from there I'm then going to start on the actual petal, so the main part of the ring. Now what I'm going to do is in this case just use the second largest step. Of course it's up to you exactly how large and how you want yours to look. So just place the mandrel right into that corner up against the loop that we just made, and then I want to bring the two lengths of wire around the mandrel, so like that, and then crossing on the other side. And then I just want to make sure that I'm crossing the wires in the same way. So if we just have a look on the bottom there, the right one is crossing over and the left one is crossing under. So I just want to make sure the same thing happens on the next one. So the right one is crossing over and the left one is crossing under. And I want to make sure that I continue that throughout to make it nice and symmetrical. So we just want to adjust our wires until we're completely happy with the shape here. So this is basically going to be our first little petal. Now from here we're going to grab our weaving wire, and I'm just going to start towards one end and just leave a short little tail. Now what I'm going to do is put that tail down through the petal shape that we just made, so the larger one of the two we have, and then just hold on to that. Now I'm going to then wrap this around on this one side of the petal here. So you're just going to have to kind of weave it in between the wires to get where we need the wire to go. And I'm just going to do that twice and then push these wraps all the way down to basically where the first crossover point is between the small loop and the big one. And then what we need to start doing is fill in this shape here, and we're going to do that using the figure of 8 weave. So I'm going to go from the bottom length and I'm going to cross over the top one, so basically switching sides, and then I'm going to wrap around that top one once and then twice, and then just make sure I bring it in between so the wire comes up through the shape there. And then we have those two wraps. I'm going to cross back to the original side where we started from. Again, just bring the wire between the other lengths, wrap around once, and then wrap around again, and constantly make sure we're pushing down the wraps so everything becomes nice and tight, and then cross to the other side and repeat the same. And this is basically then going to be filling in the shape with the weaving wire crossing from side to side, gradually working our way across. So you just want to keep doing this until I reach the middle of the petal here, because that is the widest point. And what we're going to do is continue weaving in the same way. The difference is now you'll notice that the wire is going to want to start slipping towards the narrow point on the other end there. So we just need to make sure that we avoid the wire doing that. So to counteract that, what I'm going to do is make sure that every time I do my wraps, I'm going to hold down the wraps that I did on the previous side. So keep pushing those down while I'm working on the current ones. And of course then pushing those down as well. And then as I'm swapping sides, I'm going to then push down the ones that I just made, while I then make the ones on the other side, and of course then push those as well to continue making the wraps as nice and tight, and also so the weave itself stays tight within the shape. But then you just want to keep doing that until we get to the point where the base wires there cross over each other and we've filled in the whole shape. So now I got the shape filled in here. Then what we want to do is just get this weaving wire in position to then start weaving for the next shape when we make that. So what I'm going to do is just continue wrapping around this wire that's going over the top of the other one, and basically get the weaving wire to the other side of the wire that's crossing underneath, you could say. So just wrap and push tight until you get there. And in this case, I'm then bringing it down between the two wires on the other side there. So we're basically now going to start the next petal. So I'm just going to wrap around the other base wire on the side, do 2 wraps. So now I'm already starting to do the figure of 8 weave to fill in the next shape. I just kind of like to get this started before I then actually make the shape. So just again, do that twice on the other side. And then I'm going to bring in my mandrel again. And remember, I'm using that second largest step. I'm just going to continue using that one. So place that right up against the corners of the wire, and then start to push the wires around the sides of the mandrel until they're then crossing each other on the back. So we again end up with that petal shape. And again, make sure that they're crossing in the same direction. So I've got the right one crossing over and the left one crossing under. So we're going to keep repeating that. But then from here, once we have the shape in place, we just need to continue weaving. So I left off on the top side here. I'm going to cross to the bottom and do my 2 wraps on that side. Make sure to push them down nice and tight. Cross to the other side and do my wraps. And then just like on the first one, once I get to the widest part that's about the middle, we're then going to weave from the wider to the narrow point, which I showed you how to kind of counteract that to make sure we still get a nice and tight weave. So of course you just want to keep repeating this. And otherwise, this is then how we're going to keep making the rest of the ring band. So you need to make this whatever length you need it to be to fit the size that you want. So now I got the full length that I need here, and I just want to mention something about the length. An easy way to find out how long you need to make it is have your ring mandrel or whatever you're using, then take a piece of scrap wire and then just bring that around your mandrel on the size that you want. And then I've already used this, as you can tell, but you just want to then put a little bend into where they meet up, and then you can remove it and straighten it back out. And then you there have kind of a little template that you can then use to measure against your piece as you're working with it, so you know when to stop. But then what we need to do is cut off this weaving wire from the reel. Now of course, if you're just using the ring band without beads, you can just cut it short. But if you want to add beads in, we just need to leave a bit of a length. So I'm just going to measure about 30 centimeters and then just cut it off. So I'm going to then use this tail to actually add in the beads with. And I'm just going to leave it there for now, because what I just want to do is deal with the end here. And I'm going to grab my tweezers nose pliers, and the very ends of the base wires, I want to basically straighten them out right where they're crossing over each other. So just grab one at a time and then straighten it so it comes straight out of the end there, and then just repeat the same with the other one. So they end up coming up straight next to each other, something like that. And then what I want to do next is shape the piece. So the last thing I'm going to be doing is adding the beads in. So grab your mandrel and then just start shaping this all the way around so the 2 ends meet up, something like that. Now what we need to do is then connect the 2 ends together so the ring band stays in place and keeps its shape. And that is what we're going to use that little tiny loop that we made as the very first one for. And I'm going to bring these 2 ends of the base wires through that. So first of all, I'm just going to bend the 2 base wires up a little bit, and then I want to start bringing them through that loop there. You can take one at a time or both at the same time, but bring them through the loop. And I like to do it from the front to the back and just get it gradually tighter and tighter. You can also use your pliers if you need to, until we get them to a point where they're pretty much as close as they can get. Now what I want to do is go in and cut off the excess of the base wires, and we just want to make sure to leave a short little end on the inside there. And then you can cut both of them off And then with your tweezers, just grab the two ends, or you can do one at a time, and then just start bending it back in towards itself. So we're almost creating a little loop with that end that's looping into the tiny loop that we made in the beginning. And that is how we're connecting the two. And just make sure to do the other one as well. And also the very ends of the wires are going to end up basically butting up against the side of itself further back, which is then also a way that we get rid of the end of the wire, so it's not going to catch or scratch on any skin while we're wearing it. You just want to make sure to feel it with your finger there, so you know it's not going to irritate you while you're wearing it. And then what we have left are our two tails of the weaving wire. Now of course, if you're not going to add beads in, you just want to finish them off. But if you do want to add beads in, this is where I'm going to use the longer tail that I left. And the way that I'm going to do that is by using basically where the crossover points are of the base wires. Of course, the first one here is the very end that doesn't have a crossover point, but you'll find in those spaces there's tiny little gaps between the weaving wires that we can easily bring the wire back through. So to get into position, I'm just going to bring it down through that tiny little loop, the first one that we made. So I can then bring the wire back up through that little gap, just like that. And just make sure we avoid any kinks as we're then pulling the wire all the way through, like that. And then straight away, I have my weaving wire in position to add in whatever beads I want to. Now of course, you don't have to add beads all the way around as well. You could also just add beads along the front. That's completely up to you. But I'm just going to be adding my beads to each petal to make it decorative all the way around. So since the wire is in position, I need to then add my beads onto the wire. So just add however many beads or whatever kinds of beads you want to, and let them drop all the way down. And they're going to sit across the top of the petal like that. Now that means we need to have this weaving wire come down on the exact opposite end of the petal. And same principle, there's going to be a little gap there that you can put your weaving wire through and then pull it all the way through. And then of course just make sure that the beads are going to be sitting all the way down where the wire is coming out, so that when we pull this into place, the beads are going to sit nicely across the top of the petal, just like that. And then from there, we just need to get the wire into position for the next one. So we just need to go through the gap on the other side of the base wire, but for the next petal there. So come through from the back to the front now, and then pull it all the way through. And I always like to make sure that I hold my thumb on the beads as I'm pulling the wire through to avoid pulling them loose. So pull that nice and tight, add your next two beads, let them drop all the way down, and then just repeat, go through the little gap on the very other end of that petal, come through from the front to back, and then let them drop down to sit where the wire is coming from, and then pull it all nice and tight. And there we have them sitting over the next petal. So you basically just want to keep going like this all the way until you're at the other end. So now I've added the beads all the way around, and this is what it looks like. Then what we have left to do is get rid of the ends here. So obviously we have the short end from the beginning, and then we have the long end that we've just been using for the beads. And all I'm going to do is make sure that I wrap these ends around the base wire a few times to make sure that they're nice and secure in place. So I'm just going to start with this long one. And I'm just going to, like I said, choose one of the base wires, then I'm going to be wrapping it around, and I'm going to make sure that the wraps are still nice and tight and close next to each other. And once you have those few wraps, just bring the wire around as if you're going to wrap one more time, but instead of wrapping it again, I'm going to cut off the excess, and then just make sure that I push the end down and just roll it in the direction that the wrap is going to kind of tuck it away, because again, we don't want any of those ends catching or scratching on our skin. And then we have the other one here, just going to do the same thing, just wrap it around a base wire a few times to get that nice and secure, and then bring it around, cut off the excess, and then just push down that end and tuck it away. And then if you need to, if you feel like it's gone a little bit out of shape as we've been making it, you can always put it back on your mandrel and just reshape it until you're happy with how it is. And otherwise, that's your finished ring ready to wear. So it's a really decorative ring, whether it's with or without beads. And it can look very elegant, but of course you can also make it look however you want to, depending on the beads that you add. Now don't forget to check out the matching bracelet design, it'll make a great set. And also feel free to check out my channel where I have loads of other tutorials within many different mediums. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.